The house was eerily silent. Olivia always thought she enjoyed the silence. After all, she worked in a bustling city, surrounded by noise, traffic, and constant activity. So, the thought of spending a quiet weekend at her secluded home in the countryside was bliss. But tonight, the silence felt unnatural, heavy, as if the house itself was watching her. The storm raged outside, causing the windows to tremble. She sat in the dimly lit living room, holding a cup of tea, her eyes flickering nervously to the shadows that danced across the walls. The power had been out for hours. The old generator in the basement had stopped working, and now she was left with only a flashlight and a few flickering candles to guide her way. Her phone's battery was down to 10%. No signal, no internet. Olivia tried to calm her racing heart. "It's just a storm," she whispered to herself, although her voice trembled. "There's nothing to worry about." But then the sound came, a sound. At first it was faint. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of fingers tapping on glass. Her heart skipped a beat. Her eyes snapped to the window, but there was nothing there. She leaned forward, listening carefully. The sound came again, this time louder. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the kitchen. Olivia held her breath, her pulse pounding in her ears. Slowly, she set her cup down and rose from the couch. Her bare feet barely made a sound as she moved across the wooden floor. She grabbed the flashlight and crept toward the source of the noise. The air in the house seemed to grow colder with every step she took. When she reached the kitchen, she froze. On the back door's window were 3 deep, jagged scratches. Her breath caught in her throat. The marks were fresh, tiny shards of glass still scattered on the floor. But she hadn't heard the window break. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came again, but this time it was coming from above. Her chest tightened with fear. Olivia gripped the flashlight and slowly ascended the stairs. Each step creaked beneath her weight, the sound echoing through the house. When she reached the top, she stood in front of a long hallway lined with closed doors. The sound stopped. Then, without warning, the door to her bedroom creaked open by itself. Olivia's breath hitched. Her hands were shaking as she approached the door. The atmosphere in the room was unnaturally cold, like it belonged to another world. She stepped inside. The window was wide open, the curtains billowing violently in the wind. Rain splattered on the floor, pooling around her feet. Then she saw it. A handprint on the mirror. It was large, its fingers unnaturally long, as though it didn't belong to a human. The door slammed shut behind her. Olivia spun around, but the room was empty. The flashlight's beam grew dimmer, and darkness began to creep in. Then she heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time the sound was coming from the closet. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. She stumbled back, her eyes fixed on the closet door. Tap, tap, tap. The door was shaking now, the handle slowly turning. "No, no," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tears welled up in her eyes. The door creaked open. At first there was nothing, just darkness. Then suddenly 2 glowing yellow eyes blinked in the dark. A low growl echoed, deep and menacing, like it came from another world. From the shadows something emerged. A creature, its body twisted and unnatural, moved toward her, its long claws scraping against the floor. Its mouth was stretched in a horrifying grin. "You called me," it whispered, its voice like a razor cutting through her soul. Olivia screamed and bolted out of the room. She ran down the stairs, her feet pounding the floor as her mind raced. The house now felt alive, each shadow seeming to move, each sound heightening her fear. She reached the door, frantically unlocking it. and bursting out into the storm. Drenched, she ran to her car, her heart still racing. She fumbled with the keys and slammed the door shut behind her. But something was wrong. The air inside the car was freezing, unnaturally cold. Her breath fogged up the windshield and she could feel a weight pressing on her chest. Then she heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was coming from the back seat. Slowly, Olivia turned her head, her hands trembling as she glanced into the rearview mirror. The last thing she saw was the creature's grotesque grin reflected back at her. A voice, soft but chilling, whispered from the back seat. "You can't run anymore." Her heart stopped. The car's headlights flickered as the rain beat down harder on the windshield. The creature's eyes glowed through the mirror, its grin widening. Olivia gripped the steering wheel, but her body had gone numb. She was trapped. Then everything went black.